canal of that company eating chicken on a Dali shore, where the bearded wild man guzzling overhead, who has not yet smiled, devours all but the cat and the dog, to whom he slips scraps, the red-backed accomplice busy grinding gristle. You are the flesh, I am the resurrection, because I am the light. I cut to your measure the creeping piece of darkness that haunts you in the dirt. Step into light, I make you over. I breathe the shape of your grave in the dirt. With the new directions of the century overextended, as if to call us back to nature and man, yet nature and man always more ominous, what was the substance of reconstructive return? Walker Percy's novels, for all their ease and delight, fix on characters whose world seems already to have experienced catastrophe. That foreboding has been shared. Here are two painters, perceptive and powerful, though hardly known. Stuart Boyd gives his working life as psychologist and teacher to upholding the civilized fabric, but when he puts brush to canvas above, he becomes a medium for what Cannell has lately burned into a poem, when a flash, a white flash, sparkled. This glare of reeling crucifix telephone poles, entitled Collapsing Systems, Lost Messages, and a Sudden Strange Light. While Doug Pedersen might be painting the aftermath of that irradiation, a charnel rite of healing by laying on of masks. When the sick shall heal the sick, they shall all end sicker. No European of the 50s and 60s has received more attention than the North German Beuys, in whom the furthest reach of avant-garde becomes a protest against society and finally art. Shot down over the Eastern Front in the winter of 1943, he was saved by the Tartars, who covered his body in fat to help it regenerate warmth, and wrapped it in felt to keep the warmth in. So fat and felt have dominated his Neo-Dada constructions. Here, the Pack of 1969, photographed 10 years later in the Guggenheim show. A Volkswagen bus has disgorged 20 sleds, each carrying a flashlight, felt, and fat, like Tarzan's elephants called to world rescue. In style, and even in financing, the European post-war modern has owed much to America. Disturbing to that backing when Beuys climaxed his political defiance by dumping down a pile of dirt for the Berlin Zeitgeist show of 1982, at the same time announcing disgust with all pretenses of the art scene. I am no artist, ich bin kein Künstler. In a final overflow of the art frontiers of opulence and euphoria come the staggering projects of landscape and earth alteration. Christo's first such was the packed coast of 1969, almost a mile of cliff and beach near Sydney, Australia, draped in canvas, to become for a brief time transience of the essence with Christo, a stage drop, as for some cosmic post-Wagnerian action, ephemeral, yet looming to preternatural permanence in the photographs. In music, such packaging of pathos elation stretches before us in the program scores of Philip Glass, here from Koyanis Katsi, computer patterns of chord and figuration protracting and complicating themselves almost indefinitely. Media fruit of William Carlos Williams' I Let Go. A year after Christo's Coast, Robert Smithson, reverting as others were doing to the mystery of prehistoric earthworks, piled this rock jetty spiraling into Great Salt Lake. Here permanence was no doubt intended, though it is rumored that the sidereal anchorage is already covered by the rising water. And above, our own Milky Way, with countless such galactic systems, here M81 in the Great Bear, put off their nebular, sun-condensing whorls. As in my Delta return, I saw the Mississippi from the air, in curves and reverses, fling off oxbow lakes on either side, the whole floodplain patterned still on the spiral shapes of melting, infinite seal of home-returning time on the transient floor, under star-cloud night, first matrix of that swirl. No wonder as a boy I pored over this illustration in the Book of Knowledge, astronomical distances conveyed by the travel times of trains arcing from the Earth globe to moon, sun, planets, the nearest star, imagining such star wars as the great space powers would gravitate toward. In Chicago, 1950, I waked from a dream not unlike the present show and wrote, to perceive in the scope of its profligacy the history, that is, the self-destruction of the West, is to glimpse no mere human folly, but one of those terrifying openings out of the organically wild and wasteful, the more dire for its satanic sense of direction. To see a group of living Christian nations fostering within their contradictory self-seeking and Machiavellian policy a cradled bourgeoisie of idealistic hope and criticism, bringing to bear on the faith that sustained them the acids of the liberated mind, to see those nations, as birds crack the shell, break through the medium of protective tradition, the inheritance of paradox unrecognized, into the vast of a valueless freedom, to see that well-born folly change its nature in the face of all it confronted, and meeting became to the temporizing waste of violence. The technically giant and spiritually withering nationalities, as pettily suspicious as each business and free enterprise man, though all were culturally one, undermining the other and debilitating the other, as if by mutual murder to clear a space for the alien regimen that would feed upon their ruin. This is the phenomenon we have observed and lived through and been part of, the whirl in which all values have changed. It is the turning of liberation upon itself. The compelling question remains, was this our avoidable, even now correctable folly, or is it the jealous law of every time birth? In the Book of Nightmares, Galway Connell grows reconciled to birth. Sancho Fergus, my boy child, had such great shoulders. When he was born, his head came out, the rest of him stuck. He squinted with pained, barely unglued eyes at the 9th month's blood splashing beneath him on the floor, and almost smiled, I thought, almost forgave it all in advance. But here, under the spiral galaxies, the suns and circling worlds, on atomic Earth's draped and spiral-jetted shore, to what was this Aztec goddess Quetzalcoatl carved on the eve of the conquest, now to give birth?